Hello, everybody. My name is Fraser Waldron. I hope you're doing well. In this video, I want to talk about my epistemological framework for processing news flow or current events, especially if it's an event or situation that I don't know that much about. Essentially, I have a two-step process. One is through this critical rationalism framework, which I'll explain. And then two, it's the sort of acknowledgement that humans are emotionally led with logic on the back end when it comes to forming an opinion. And I keep those two things in check, and that helps me process information in a more effective way than when I don't do that. One of the reasons I wanted to do this was because I've noticed in the past 3-4 months, I've been getting lots of requests from people in my own network to talk about law enforcement related stuff, specifically relating to the situation going on in the US with immigration and illegal immigrants, things of that nature. So when the police are caught on video doing something good or bad, I often find that people in my network are sending me those videos or asking just for an opinion on how the use of force is used, things like that. I guess I'm somewhat of an expert on that because I have a long career in law enforcement as well as working at Interpol. I've worked in lots of different criminal justice systems across North America, Asia, Africa, etc., Europe. So I've kind of worked with everyone at some point in the law enforcement bubble. So my opinion, I guess, is somewhat useful, although I would debate that sometimes. Anyways, the point of that is that I think people like my opinions sometimes because my framework assumes that I'm wrong often, and I'll go through this a little bit. So I think if you use this framework, you'll be more able to maneuver through the social media milieu, as well as being able to be a more fun guest at Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever holidays you celebrate with your family. You can be the crazy uncle, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, so the first thing I do is I have an overarching epistemological framework. Epistemology is just the philosophical study of how you know anything to be true. That's a 3,000-year conversation between philosophers and academics, but essentially the short end of it, the last bit in the last 100 years has pushed out something called critical rationalism, which is an idea by one of my favorite philosophers, Karl Popper. And in his philosophical frame, essentially it's the scientific method with a falsification component to it. So in most cases, if you have an opinion on a current event or on anything, you try to confirm it or see if it's true. So you'd use induction or deduction to go, here's my hypothesis. I think, dogs are better than cats. And then I try to prove that true. Or, how many atoms are, in the universe. I try to prove this true. And so critical rationalism supports that, of course, but it adds one little wrinkle, which is essentially you try to falsify your opinion as much as possible. And when you can't falsify it anymore, or if you're unable to falsify it, then you're probably close to the ground truth. So an example of that you could hear from a philosopher who embraces this is the classic thought experiment of imagine like a field with a hill. There's a big hill in the middle of a field. It's like a farmer's field, so there's a fence. And the question would be, are there any black sheep on the field? And maybe you can see 4 or 5 white sheep walking around, but you can't actually see on the far side of the hill. And because you can't see on the far side of the hill, that's essentially assuming that you don't have perfect information. And I think that's true in reality. Like, I'm not God. Everything comes in by the senses, through my eyes, through my ears, and my meat computer processes that stimuli to create a map of the world. But that's not necessarily one-for-one reality, perhaps, right? So the meat computer is spinning. In this thought experiment, I'm trying to find the sheep. Where's that black sheep on the other side? I can never see it. As I walk around, there's always a part of the field that I can't really see, which is to say that there's always new information that could come to me that could change my opinion. So essentially, this puts me in a scenario, if you follow to its logical conclusion, that you can have a strong opinion on any topic, but you have to hold it really lightly, where a new piece of information can change your opinion, and that would be intellectually, let's say, more honest than just having a strong opinion and finding lots of ways to confirm it, even if there isn't good evidence for it. So that process really helps me out. So when I'm looking at those law enforcement videos, for example, I look at it and I go, I don't have perfect information. So my opinion, even if I really have a strong opinion right off the bat, I can hold that really lightly, because as new information arises, my opinion might radically change. And anyone who's worked in the criminal justice system, when you go to court, very quickly, like a new piece of information can move the trial in a different direction, right? Like everyone's watched like the TV shows and stuff, right? Like new piece of information, he's not guilty, he is guilty. So essentially you have to have the intellectual humility to go, you know what, I have a strong opinion about whatever the topic is, but I'm willing to change at any moment. A more extreme version of this at the macro, you could say, was, for example, you could take something like the theory of evolution, which is like thousands of studies support that process existing in the world. But if there was one paper or one study that proved it wrong, that falsified that theory, then that fact, let's say, or that theory would be thrown out, and the biological sciences would have to readjust to accommodate that new paradigm shift. And so I try to do that essentially with my own life in all situations, whether that's, Israel, Palestine, whether that's Ukraine, Russia. I hold strong opinions on those topics, but I'm always willing to change as new information arises. And this is a key element. So if you just try to falsify your own ideas and hold this humility that you don't have perfect information, that takes you 99% of the way there. And then the added little twist on that is from David Hume, one of my favorite Scottish philosophers, who always inferred, one of his ideas anyways, was that emotion leads logic. So humans are emotionally laden. If they really strongly believe in a political party or a certain topic, like, I hate the police, I love the police, that bias is totally natural and normal. And maybe at the group level, that's useful, but at a macro level, that's problematic. So if you're watching a social media thing and you're like, yeah, like I hate police, and every video I watch, like it just confirms that I hate police more, likely you're caught by an ideological capture, or you've got a strong emotional attachment to a certain narrative for whatever reason. And I have this too. I'm a former police officer, so I'm really biased towards police officers are good, let's say, or the job they're doing is tough, and I give them lots of leeway. And so when I do see something where a police officer is making a big mistake or is doing something criminal, I can feel my resistance to that, to accepting that negative hit. Like I feel like I'm losing, like my team's taking a negative hit, which of course is nonsense, but human and natural. And so what I'll do is I apply my critical rationalism with the knowledge that I'm emotionally biased, and I go, new information can change my opinion. So I can hold that, maybe that police officer in this video did a bad job and did a bad thing, and I'm willing to change my opinion on, the context, or based on the context that I'm observing. And that makes me pretty deadly when it comes to global affairs or anything, because one of the things I've noticed is that when I travel around the world, because I've been to lots of different places, often people's opinions about generic topics are significantly different based on region. So, for example, when I was in Uganda, I was a remote area. I was on the border of Congo, like way out there. And I was talking to these police officers, and the Ukraine war had just occurred, where Russia had just gone into Ukraine to invade it. And it was very interesting because my perception with my colleagues and workers from a sort of Western background were that was an invasion. That was not necessarily the best thing, and that Russia was, maybe an aggressor force. Maybe that was my baseline. And then these Ugandans, police officers who were relatively high ranking, just from not from their geopolitical knowledge per se, but they uniformly had the total opposite opinion, essentially that Russia was an anti-colonial force and was, doing great work in Africa to remove European powers, which is an interesting anecdote. Again, that just kind of emerged, but everyone had the same opinion. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting that like the norms in which your in-group align, everyone had the same opinion, but I was the only one who didn't. So I had to use my critical rationalism there and go, oh, like, does this new information change my perspective? Let's dig into that more. So I didn't just resist them and say, no, you guys are wrong. I had like that intellectual curiosity to go, oh, maybe that's the sheep on the other side of the hill, and maybe I need to adjust. In that case, I don't think I needed to really. But the point was that I had the ability to see a different opinion and then try to integrate it or falsify it to see if it was something worth keeping. And that makes me intellectually honest, I think, but also gives me, I think, an advantage when it comes to processing information, especially in the news. It's quick and fast, and it keeps me square. And then lastly, there's that in-group bias where I go, hey, maybe I'm super pro-Ukraine because I'm from a Western context and I empathize with that for some reason. So, hey, is this information valid enough to change my opinion, override my emotion? In that case, it wasn't, but at least I gave myself the opportunity to let that process occur. So if the information was really good and they were convincing, I would have been like, you know what? I completely changed my opinion. And I think that's good. So if you have had the same philosophical positions or political positions for a very long time, especially like core ones, always make sure that you are always willing to change your position if new information arises. And if you're not willing to change your position if new information arises, potentially that can be dangerous because maybe you're orientated in a way that's not good. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. It's up for you to decide. But if you're dogmatic, that can lead to problematic situations if your alignment is off kilted, let's say. So that'd be my advice. Take the critical rationalism, take that David Hume emotional attachment component to it, and then you'll be the cool guy at the dinner table on Thanksgiving or whatever the case. So that's how I process information when it comes to news. I hope that was useful for you. I'll catch you in the next video.